On behalf of SAIA Practice, a very warm welcome to all SAIA members, friends of SAIAshare, and also those who have joined us for the very first time, and especially today to those who have joined us from the cold and wintry Cape. It would appear that you're going to have a rather cold weekend. My name is Eugene Barnard. It is a privilege to welcome you all this afternoon to SAIAshare number 24. As usual, Karina Gibson from ECPD is here to make sure everything runs smoothly. Welcome, Karina. I trust you are keeping well. We do hope you will enjoy this afternoon with us. We've got two very interesting presenters whom I'm sure you're going to enjoy. In session 2, we'll be welcoming Stan Siegel to the screen. But before we do that, it is my privilege to welcome Nadia Trump, who will be addressing the topic social justice in practice. Nadia, I just want to check. Thank you. You got your screen on. After working for some of the most prestigious design firms in South Africa, Nadia started Ntsika Architects in 2008. That makes it 15 years, if my maths is correct, Nadia. Nadia is particularly interested in the spatial fragmentation of South African cities and the need to increase equitable public spaces and buildings. Just take a look at the accolades and you will see that Nadia has received multiple awards for her work locally and internationally. Her work has been exhibited at the 16th International Architecture Exhibition, the Venice Biennale. Her sculpture Refuge was displayed in the garden of the Palazzo Mora in Venice in Italy. Nadia is internationally acclaimed, acknowledged for her lifetime of achievements and for her work and deep sense of social commitment. Nadia, personally from me and from our attendees, I'm sure, thank you very much for being part of SAIAshare and for the vision of investing in the architectural profession. Thank you for making a difference, and we look forward to listening to you. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Eugene, for that great introduction, and thank you so much to SAIA Practice Committee for inviting me to be here today. Thank you to everyone who's attending, who's interested in the work that I do, and thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. So today I will be talking about spatial justice and what that means to me in terms of how I practice and the work that we produce. Jeannie Gang talks about the architect as a relationship builder. For me, I believe this to be true. The architect can become the instrument for creating change and strengthening connections between new and existing social structures to pull towards a more cohesive social and urban fabric. When looking into theories around human-centered design, the IDEO Field Guide to Human-Centered Design states that embracing human-centered design means believing that all problems, even the seemingly intractable ones like poverty, gender equality, and clean water, are solvable. Moreover, it means believing that people who face those problems every day are the ones who hold the key to their answer. Human-centered design offers problem solvers of any stripe a chance to design with communities, to deeply understand the people they are looking to serve, to dream up scores of ideas, and to create innovative new solutions rooted in people's actual needs. This approach is core to my design philosophy. Architects have the power to create physical environments that uplift and challenge social injustices of the past. In the action of engaging with marginalized communities who have seldom had the ability to exercise their own agency in terms of their built environment, it is an opportunity to assist these self-same people to create their own spaces and shape their futures. Architectures must capture the imagination of its users and allow the user to begin to dream of something better, to aspire to more. So when we were approached by the city to design the Transformation and Development Center for Westbury, we were thrilled. Having worked in this community before, we were starting to grasp the economic environment of the area and the social environment, and the need for such a facility was great. Westbury lies to the west of Joburg City. Lies to the west of Joburg City. It is a harsh and hard place to live. Known for gang violence, this becoming synonymous with the name Westbury. Very little thought or investment was given to the social infrastructure of such neighborhoods in the past. Yeah, so you see, the apartheid planning of our previous undemocratic government wrote into law the separation of people, and this was concretized in the spatial planning. Non-white communities were pushed to the outskirts of the cities, leaving the poorest of the poor with no job opportunities where they lived and too far from economic hubs, often without public transport systems in place. The poorest of the population were earning the lowest wages and having to spend the largest amount and largest part of their wages on traveling costs. The South African cities remain among the most inefficient, unequal urban environments in the world. The Westbury Transformation Development Center is a mixed-use public building that challenges the importance of architecture in changing our urban landscapes in ways that can affect spatial and social justice. So we started to engage with the communities that would be end users in this project. We spoke to, with a complex project brief with multiple end user stakeholders meant getting to understand the very specific needs of very different groupings of people. Our engagement process was carried out with the littlest users to the senior citizens and the teenagers. This was an enriching experience for us as designers. And in the end, our brief was long and tailored to the needs of each grouping. Our client, the Department of Social Development, embraced the opportunity to have a building fit for purpose. Through our engagements, we started to understand that in this environment of poverty and sometimes helplessness, hope remained. We also learned that the client's needs and community needs are very often different. We realized that the community needs are much more tangible, direct, and sometimes simple. Their primary concern was immediate economic survival, which in this context meant jobs. And their second concern, but of equal importance, was safety. So the challenge we faced was multifaceted. We asked ourselves the following questions. How could one design a building that would immediately address their biggest concern, that being economic opportunity and survival? And how could this building become the safe haven which the community so desperately needs? Well, we could create jobs almost immediately for the community by incorporating methods of construction that would employ unskilled and semi-skilled labor. This informed most of the building design, which was standard brick and mortar. Through this training on the project, people would now form part of the labor force and would take their skills to find work beyond the life of the Westbury TDC. More than 40% of people employed on the project were local, unskilled labor. So the site is a long, narrow sliver of land. It skirts the edge of this marginalized community of Westbury and is located in a very prominent corner of Westbury itself. It becomes the gateway to the community. And this community is separated by major arterial routes. The building envelope, restricted by the limited buildable area, holds the corner and then steps to sit far back off the Main Street edge. This carves out a generous public space, a linear park in front of the building, to be used by the community for various social, sporting, cultural, and everyday activities. The public space is invaluable in this community, where space was never before afforded. It is as important, if not more, than the building itself, and becomes the catalyst for change. Conceptually, the design seeks to create smaller safe spaces within a larger program and to create a generous public space along the front of the building. The existing school building, St. Barnabas School, was built in 1935 and carries a significance to the community's collective memory of the space. The building becomes the anchoring point to the site around which the design hinges. Repurposed as the preschool classrooms for the ECD. The stoic charred timber cladding wraps a defensive courtyard against the busy corner of Perth Road and Harmony Street. This defensive skin is unassuming and turns its back on the street. But once you step inside, the ECD courtyard is filled with a burst of color and is focused on the experience of the child. The long built form is orientated along the north-south axis of the site. This allows long, narrow floor plates to get the maximum natural daylight deep into each floor with natural cross ventilation is easily achieved. The western and eastern facades are intentionally short with minimal sun shading required. All services are located along the southern facade. Passive heating and cooling is an integral element to the design. An integrated green approach has been taken towards the shading of the building. The northern facade has deep horizontal fins with a large concrete overhang on the first and second floors. Being in a summer rainfall region, the north-facing living screen is in full bloom during summer months, creating cool, comfortable spaces during these months. In winter, the plants lose their leaves, letting in the warm winter sun. Changing color and texture of the creepers differentiates the internal program beyond, changing as the seasons change. The planted wall formed part of the community engagement program, where families were offered the opportunity to grow a 1 meter squared pallet of indigenous succulents, which were then transplanted onto the building to form its 9 meter tall green wall. A greenhouse on the second floor becomes a focal point for the food security program run by the state. Here, the critical skills of growing your own food is taught as one way to address food scarcity and work towards self-sustainability. The double volume structure of the amphitheater houses a multi-purpose center and sports hall, which opens up onto the amphitheater and planted garden on the roof. This space becomes a stage upon itself, where the surrounding community has the visual connection to activities happening on the amphitheater and inside the sports hall. This constant visual connection of activities inside the building and the life happening outside the building creates a joyful tension and ever-changing curiosity between the building and its users. The sustainability of public buildings goes beyond the architectural interventions of scale and comfort. As important to us is the inclusion of the communities in which these buildings are designed and giving agency and aspirations to such communities. This can only be achieved through collaborative and inclusionary practices. Located at the gateway to Westbury, this project offers a unique opportunity to shift perceptions. It begins to change the urban landscape and offers the prospect for outsiders to start seeing a community in all its diversity. Where land was taken from so many people before, this project gives back. It gives back a public building that works, a space which is equitable and can be used by all. Though this project has won awards locally and internationally, I feel it's somewhat academic because currently the project is not fully occupied. And as architects, we can only really judge the success of a project once it is in full use and how users respond to those buildings. I would like to show another project just in brief, if that's fine.
Please carry on, Nadia.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Okay, so I would like to now talk about the Westbury Clinic. Marginalized communities are often poorly serviced and have very few public amenities. The public facilities which one can find are often behind a fence and very clearly enforcing exclusion. If we were to achieve anything with this project, the Westbury Clinic, it would be to challenge this norm. So when we started this project, we asked ourselves a few simple questions. The first question being, can design mitigate and reduce the spread of airborne diseases? TB still being one of the #1 causes of death in South Africa and in Africa. And then the second question that we posed to ourselves was, how can design change the way we think about public facilities in South Africa? Where the fear of violent crime usually forces us to put everything behind a fence, how do we start to change the way clients, in this case city departments, think about this? And how can we start informing the public's perception of public buildings? So we set out the mechanisms for meaningful engagement with the local community, which led to surprising outcomes, and the users of the facility feeling in the end that this building was theirs. In response to the limitations of the land, the clinic occupies the smallest possible area and opens up to outdoor spaces which serve as external waiting rooms. These outdoor waiting areas are an integral design response in preventing the spread of communicable diseases. So the outdoor waiting areas are integral in the design, as I said, and become the external waiting areas of the clinic. And this clinic is slightly different to other primary healthcare clinics where it is where the footprint needed to be taken over 2 floors to be able to accommodate all the facilities. The ramp circulation is pushed to the outside of the envelope of the building to allow the interior spaces to remain generous in an already tight space. The typical South African primary healthcare facility, in these typical ones, users of a clinic would arrive at 5 a.m. in the morning and would have to wait for hours before allowed to enter the clinic grounds. Our building challenges this paradigm. The building is set back from the street edge, creating a generous public space in front of the building onto the street. It has no fence around it. Robust steel furniture and concrete furniture is placed to encourage human interaction and engagement with the local users. The public space creates the possibility for positive, meaningful interaction and allows the community to reappropriate the land as an act of healing through social justice. The double-story street facade, is designed with high-level openings so that the space is always looked over. It creates a backdrop for life unfolding while creating a safe surveilled space. The landscape softens the edges, providing shade. Public engagement was facilitated through the project from initial design stages through construction. The construction method was also about building relationships and the opportunity to start rebuilding trust in the community. The English bond face brick is reminiscent of the traditional face brick buildings of Joburg CBD, and its aesthetic speaks to its surrounds while simultaneously differentiating itself through its height and monolithic aesthetic. As a result, it provides a relatable landmark. This is a low-tech method of construction and easy to do. Local laborers were trained, and this building was constructed predominantly using local labor. This creation of jobs started building confidence in the local community, demonstrating that the local government was paying attention to the plight of unemployment. Our participatory approach to this design allowed us to harness local skills and incorporate those skills in very visible ways into the design. The steel screens were made by local artisans and was our design solution to the client's request that we put burglar bars on all windows. We had very low wastage, and the cutouts of the steel screens were incorporated into other parts of the building. All materials were locally sourced. So we hope that in this project that the creation of a different, creating a paradigm shift with the client in terms of how they look at public projects, that this would start changing the local community's perception of their worth and and to open the ideas for them that they actually do deserve better public amenities, and it could be done. And in the end, we feel that this is a very successful project. We've created a building and an environment that heals, one that promotes health and human dignity, and really done through very simple design solutions. Thank you.
Right, Nadia, thank you very, very much for that presentation. I wonder whether you can, there we are, you can join me on the screen. And I neglected to remind the attendees, we have just a few minutes to address any questions that you might have or comments. So feel free in the questions box to let us have comments. Maybe I can just get the ball rolling. I'm very interested, Nadia, in both projects you speak about community engagement and participation. I'd be interested to know how you achieve that and how taxing is that on the process. Is that seen as something, an additional service that is rendered on the project, or is that engagement absorbed as part of your standard appointment? Maybe you can just give us some feedback on that.
Sure. So Eugene, it's not unusual that we have these kind of participatory engagements. Many architects that work in this sphere would tell you the same. It's a requirement by the government, by local government, when working within communities and doing community projects. I think for me and for my practice, it's something that we actually embrace, because I feel it's important when you're doing a public project to have that kind of engagement. And coming from a community, a marginalized community, I was never really exposed to good architecture. So when I started practicing and had this opportunity to go into communities, I actually embraced it. I think it's a good thing. So for me, it's been something that we've developed over the years, set up initially in terms of the structures of our clients, that this was something that had to be done. But I think it's something right. It's something that the government is doing right in terms of doing projects within communities.
Great. Thank you, Nadia. We have some questions that have come in. Thank you, John, for your comment on the children. There's a comment here from Dimitar Dobrev. who just comments on the urban edges. Obviously, you sit within a context and the urban edges seem to be hard or harsh. I presume that was intentional, Nadia?
Yes, very intentional. I mean, so Westbury is known as has the highest steel theft rate in the country. So that was one starting point, right? And so it's quite a harsh environment. But I think we must remember that these environments are such because of the social construct of our history. And along with that comes all the social ills like gangsterism, like the high theft that I spoke about. And so our clients are always very concerned about security. And I can see it from the client's point of view where the security may be an issue. But what we try to develop is a way to deal with that security without being exclusionary. And I think, yes, the building edge looks like a harsh edge. It's a surveilled space, particularly the Westbury Clinic. But I think it creates a very successful public space in front of that building. And that gives back so much more to the community than just a building. We managed to obviously accommodate all of the client's requirements in terms of the program and the use, etc. But to try and push those boundaries so that we can actually add even further value to a project of this kind.
Great. Thanks, Nadia. Ken, thank you for your question. I think Nadia has touched on that, public participation. Natalie, thank you for your comment. Wonderful to see the potential possibilities locally. Heather comments, we lack a public realm in South African cities. Nadia is one of the few architects addressing this in her work. As Enrique Peñalosa, former mayor of Bogota, once said, it's on the street that people meet as equals. Thanks, Heather. Derek Libber, thank you, Derek, for your kind compliments. Derek also says, love the colors. The debt, how do you achieve quality control with community produced portions of building?
Yes, that's a real challenge. Yeah, that's a real challenge. I think in these two projects, luckily we worked with contractors that were experienced and that were, that had done projects of this kind or magnitude before. So could manage the local labor aspect of it. But what we tried to do in our projects is not only look at kind of unskilled local labor, but try and look at artisans that have a skill and how do we incorporate that into a building, because that kind of gives you a level of quality or expectation that one has, and because they are artisans that do this, you are it's a little bit less risky. And so one has more control of what the outcome is.
Great. And Nadia, I just return to Ken's question. His question was really participation of the residents in the construction process. So yes, I think that's what you've just addressed now. So let's see. Beautiful building. Look, I'm just touching on the comments that have come through. Thank you, Chris. Then Natalie, again, thank you for the great presentation. In terms of budget, did the design conceptual image change drastically to this end result? So how did the budget impact on your final result?
Yeah, so the budget was really challenging. This building cost 70 million rand. It was 5,000 square meters, so it's a very low budget for that area. And so we had to be quite creative in terms of how we make that budget stretch. But in terms of quality, there were definitely some shortfalls that we found in terms of particularly the timber work on the ECD. Contractor took a few shortcuts, and so that we're actually going back to try and repair some of that work. And then also the challenge by the city not occupying the building fully, which also lends itself to deterioration and then lack of maintenance. So it's very challenging, trying to keep the building in the state as it was when handed over. Yeah, and then, sorry, there was a second part to that question. Oh, were there parts that we didn't do? Yes, so in the conceptual drawing at the ECD, you may notice there was a red structure at the entrance to the ECD, and we didn't get to build that. There was just no budget for it. And in the end, we closed the gate. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Chinadam, thank you for your comments. Nadia can actually see your comments. John, thank you for your question. Unfortunately, we have run out of time to address further questions. So my apologies to John, Ken, and the rest of you, Maria and Paulina. Thank you for posting the questions, but I'm going to have to, on your behalf, thank Nadia once again sincerely for your input, Nadia. Stay with us. We don't have a sponsor today, so that's good news, because we're going to move straight on and introduce you to Stan Siegel, our second participant. So Stan, I've had the privilege of knowing Stan and working with him for many years. So Stan, welcome to the screen. Stan was born in Pretoria before the Second World War. Now that puts him in quite a unique category. He studied architecture at the University of Pretoria, Vlok and van der Westhuizen, and later MV3 Architects was his professional home for much of his career. Stan will be best remembered in professional terms by our generation of architects for his invaluable dedication and work on the SAIA Practice Committee, at JBCC, at Proxa, and the mid-career courses run by SAIA. Stan also authored the third edition of Ivan Finson's book on the building contract. And as if that is not enough, Stan and Lynn have been happily married for 63 years. They have a son and 2 daughters. Stan will be addressing the very important topic, adhering to the mandate of your client and the importance of project communication. Thank you so much, Stan, for being willing to share with us a lifetime of experience.
Right. Good afternoon, colleagues. At the outset, I'd like to thank Eugene for his kind introduction and the practice committee for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation to you today. By way of introduction, at the end of my first year of studying architecture in 1956, I decided to look for work in an architectural firm with a varsity vacation period. After approaching a number of firms, I ended up working for a small practice in Pretoria, and the first job I was given was to produce a window schedule for a new technical college for which the practice had been appointed. What did I know at that stage of my career about window schedules? In later years, I realized that window schedules all consisted of the same basic elements and eventually produced a window data sheet checklist. Some of the items on the checklist were: can the window be opened without difficulty? Does the window need burglar proofing? What material is to be used? What type of glass is to be installed and how fixed? If the window opens onto a passage or corridor, will a person walking past bang their head on the window if it's open? How easy is it to clean the window? And also the finishes, etc., that are required on the window frames. At the end of my third year of full-time study, my late father advised me that he could no longer meet my varsity expenses. I was most fortunate that at that time, the university still offered a diploma in architecture course, which allowed a student to work in an architect's office, have time off to attend lectures, but had to do all the studio work at home after working hours. At that stage, I joined a two-man practice as their first employee. That practice was Vlok and Van der Westhuizen. In my first 3 months in that firm, I learned more about the practice of architecture than the 3 previous years as a full-time student at university. After graduating in April 1962, the principals offered me a partnership in the practice, which I gladly accepted. The advantage of joining a smaller practice was that you are immediately exposed to all aspects of the work that an architect does. One of my early experiences as a newly qualified architect was that a couple came to see me as they wanted me to design a new house for them on a large plot in the Willows, east of Pretoria. They brought along a number of magazine cuttings indicating what they considered to be what they envisaged for their new home. I took a look at these cuttings, tore them up and dropped them in the bin. The response to their wide-eyed amazement, I told them that if they wanted what was in magazines, they didn't need me as their architect. I ended up designing their home, which they were delighted with, and we remain good friends. Having been in private practice for 62 years, it was extremely difficult for me to choose a suitable topic for discussion today, as so many different thoughts went through my mind as what to share with you from the experience gained over 62 years in practice in just the 20 minutes allotted to me. Eugene, whom I've known for the last 30 or so years, suggested I give my audience a message from the experience gained during my years in architectural practice. Some thoughts I considered were, what is architecture? Is it an art or a science? What changes have occurred in architecture in the last half century, from drawing boards to computers? A complete and incredible change in mindset. How has technology impacted on the way architects work, specifying new construction methods, new building materials, and many new building regulations, which seriously impact on the responsibility of architects today? Today, I'm focusing on 2 aspects. The first being the responsibility of the architect towards his or her client, and more specifically on the role of the principal agent as set out in the various JBCC building agreements and the proxy client professional consultant agreement. My additional topic is about communication. Clients expect their architects to carry out their mandate, provide an excellent service, and to act with due diligence, skill, and expertise with respect to the design, documentation, contract administration, etc., from the commencement of a project until final completion, without things going wrong. What happens when things go wrong? And believe me, they certainly do go wrong. Who suffers when things go wrong? Is it the client, the contractor, the architect, the other professional consultants on the project, and in some instances, the public in general? In my last 25 years of active practice, I've been involved in a large number of arbitrations, adjudications, and expert witness cases, most of which arose out of the architects taking on the role of the principal agent and not administering the contract as is required of them. I believe that if an architect is incapable of acting as a principal agent or not wanting to take on that responsibility, he or she should advise the client at an early stage to appoint some other suitable person to take on that responsibility. And the other suitable person would probably be a professional project manager. The other problem that I have come across is that in some instances, the building regulations have not been followed, such as the provision of adequate or correct handrails on staircases, the dimensions of steps, and even more seriously, the level difference between a finished external ground level and the internal floor level, which causes rising damp in the external wall, which is extremely costly and very difficult to rectify. As an example of things that can and did go wrong, I was recently engaged in 2 projects, both designed by different architects, one being a block of flats and the other the conversion of an existing office building into an hotel with the addition of floors above the building. In both instances, the architect decided to break away from the convention of placing windows in the center of the wall with windowsills and a drip at the window head. In both cases, the windows were placed flush with the external face of the wall finish and the vertical and horizontal joints sealed with a sealant. Karina, can you please call up the first slide for us? Thank you very much. Now on this slide, looking through a window, you can see the building in the background that has flush windows on the external facade, no windowsills, no window head or anything like that. Now, in both cases, this slide shows a more enlarged portion of the facade showing the windows, which became very problematic. In both cases, the sealant failed. Rainwater seeped into the window head, the sides and bottom of the window. The slides show the damage to the window head. There you can see the water penetrating at the top and at the side of the windows. Obviously, it's a flush plastered finish inside. A flush plaster doesn't really like water. And you see the actual paint and plaster blistering. The resultant damage caused the hotel to close down. Can we go on to the next slide, please? There you see the damage caused by the continual entry of water into that's on the reveals of the window. And the next slide will show you what happens on the actual window sill. There, the window sill is crumbling completely. This damage caused the hotel to close down completely, and the matter is now in the process of being resolved. Who was responsible for this disaster, and who is affected by the closure of the hotel? Those questions I will leave in your minds. On a lighter note, in my earlier years in practice, I was appointed by a client for the design of additions and alterations to her existing house, and she insisted that I provide for the installation of a bidet in the ensuite bathroom. After completion of the project, I received a phone call from the client to inform me that there was something wrong with the new bidet. She explained that when she sat on the bidet, she could not reach the tap which was behind her. My advice to her was to sit facing the tap. Problem solved. On a more serious note, M3 Architects won a design competition for the new Armscor headquarters in Erasmusrand, which is east of Pretoria. This was the largest commission that the firm had ever been appointed for in the mid-1980s. The client advised us to tackle this large project as you would eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Many lessons were learned from this project, some of which I would like to share with you this afternoon. In the first instance, we appointed a project programmer to prepare a documentation program for all of the documentation, including the major consultants. This action saved approximately 3 months on the production of the technical documentation. So thank you. On smaller projects, we developed our own project planning sheet, which is shown on this particular slide. This sheet makes provision for the architect to insert the various activities in the allotted column. That's the column on the left-hand side, which says activity. The estimated hours to deal with each activity and the approximate time required for the project documentation, council approval, calling for tenders, and the construction period. We normally print this project planning sheet. We normally print on an A3 size sheet of paper, and then fill in all the various activities and who's going to be working on it, who the project team, how many hours would be needed, and then along the horizontal line, we actually fill in there the week, the time, etc., so that we can eventually pick up right to the end of the job if it's going to take 12 months or 18 months or 2 years, whatever it is. And of course, this would be sheet number 1, and there would probably be 3 or 4 sheets which make up the project planning sheet. So with this, it gives us a very good idea, and we also involve all the consultants when putting or preparing this project planning sheet. We involve the consultants, getting their input, particularly the structural engineer, quantity surveyor, electrical engineer, the principal consultants that we use. Now, on the second instance that came up from this programmer is that we later changed the large A0 door and window schedules into A4 door and window data sheets, and further introduced room data sheets in place of A0 schedule of finishes. The advantage of this change was that individual A4 data sheets could be completed and issued as soon as the information was available without having to wait until the complete schedule was available. From the contractor's point of view, he could easily print copies of the data sheets for distribution to suppliers and subcontractors. Now, on this particular Armscor project, we had something like 14 A0 sheets for door schedules and window schedules and that sort of thing. And the contractor required us to provide him with something like 23 or 24 copies of each of those sheets when they were issued. And it sometimes took time to complete the complete sheet because there was information awaited. And that's why the programmer said to us, take a look at changing to A4 sheets. And in practice, from then on, I've always used A4 room data sheets, window data sheets, and door data sheets. Thirdly, on that project, we introduced a document issue system for this project, which proved extremely effective, especially when the contractor attempted to claim a delay in respect of the issuing of documents. At a later stage, when we were interviewed for the Lost City project at Sun City, one of the first questions asked by the prospective client was, what system do you use for issuing documents? The rest is history. An example of the system we used for issuing contract instructions is shown on the next slide. And what we do, we call this a document issue slip. And on the slip, it's obviously got the architect's information, and then it's who it's addressed to, the company, the attention of whoever it is. Then it says who it's from, what the date, the project reference, and then that's a project description. And then it says underneath that, with reference to the above, we attach the documents as follows. And then we list the documents here, be it drawings, be it whatever it is, contract instruction, anything that is issued. And at the bottom here, we say, kindly sign and return the yellow copy to the architect. Now, and then it's signed by the architect, and it's signed by the person who receives the document with the date and the time. Now, the importance of this is that the yellow copy we keep, the white copy the contractor keeps. And in this instance, on the Armscor project, where claim was submitted for late issue of information, we produced the yellow copy we had, which was signed, dated, and the time on it, and the claim just disappeared. So it's essential that we look at using systems like this. Right. Over the years, I realized that while each project is different, the basics are the same, and this led to the creation of standard checklists for each phase of the project. After recently relocating to a retirement village, that's where I'm staying now, if I can locate these documents, I would like to make them available through SAIA to those of you who would like to make use of them. These took quite a long time to develop, these various checklists, and you know, I divided it up into checklists for sketch plans, checklists for council drawings, checklists for construction drawings, and each element, like doors, like windows, like door frames, those all are all require to be checked, because what I've found is that when you are in practice and the practice grows, you find that you don't have time personally to look at every single thing. And what we did on those checklists is we had 3 columns. The one column is what's got to be done. The second column is got to be initialed by the draftsperson who's working on that particular project. And the last column is signed off by the project architect who's actually looking after that project. And if there's information still missing, then the draftsperson would just write on the project, information still awaited. Okay, the next topic that I would like to briefly discuss is that of communication. Besides the art and science involved in architecture, I'm of the opinion that communication is perhaps the most important aspect which needs consideration. Whatever an architect produces, be it a sketch plan, technical documentation, minutes of meetings, contract instructions, certification, inspection lists, and anything else that needs to be conveyed by the architect to the client, the local authority, the other professional consultants, and the contractor falls under this heading of communication. It is vital that all communication should be in written form, be it a drawing, an email, or other form of communication, and must be accurate, concise, and easily understandable, with the project name, number, and date on which it is issued. The best practice is to set up performer lists or examples of what is to be contained in such communications, especially minutes of site progress meetings. Have a standard format for the issuing of documents and/or drawings, and make sure that the document issue slip or contract instruction is signed by the receiver with date and time of receipt, and a copy returned to the architect. As far as I'm aware, the schools of architecture do not have a subject called communication in their syllabus, and greater attention in this field is required. In conclusion of this short chat, my message to all of you is to work smarter and not harder by implementing standard documentation systems, making use of checklists, gin up on building regulations, and stay out of trouble. As an aside, when we introduced CAD into our office in 1981, some of our staff members were concerned they would lose their jobs, to which I replied that once they are trained in using CAD, we would be able to generate more work with the same team. As time has now run out, I will end off this talk by wishing all of you success in your chosen career in the difficult times we're experiencing in this great country. Thank you.
Well, Stan, that was a tough order to have to condense 62 years of knowledge and experience into 20 minutes, but thank you very much. You've touched on the nerve ends. I think technology has changed so much, but the principles just remain the same. Colleagues, I just want to then just see, there've been some comments have come through. So Stan, if you don't mind, obviously we're going to have to deal with them briefly, but let's see how far we can get with the questions. here, where do we start here? I have to go back now. Stan, in your experience, are architects sort of vulnerable in arbitrations and more so than previously? Any comment on that?
Yes, Eugene, basically I find that the arbitrations that I've been involved in where architects are concerned, most of the time the architects have not done their job properly. They've not met deadlines, they've not issued documents when they should have, they've caused delays, they've delayed granting extension of time within a period that they should give it, and coming afterwards, and it creates a problem for the client. And the client then has a go at the architect, and they normally end up in arbitration.
Okay.
And
so what you're saying is
to
do your work properly.
Architects must do that properly.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned with principal agency, there are a lot of architects who say, I don't want to be a principal agent. Sorry about this.
Niels, Niels
my son phoning me from Boston.
Okay, okay. Niels wants to know, you know, Stan, when you fill in the SANS 10400 forms 1 to 4, there's a part where you must indicate which aspects of the design and documentation the engineer is responsible for. The question is, when architects do not indicate who the competent persons are, that implies that the architect will then be responsible for those aspects of the work?
No, Eugene, the architect is responsible for coordinating the work of consultants with his work. Okay. He's the professional who is in total control of the project, and he needs to consult with the consultants and make sure that, whether it's depending on what design it is, when we're doing that Arms Corps project, we spent a lot of time, especially on CAD, with providing zones for the different services, so that we would not have clashes on site.
Okay, and so that would really mean that an architect must make sure that responsibilities are clearly defined, and that he then coordinates those services during the process, if he's the principal consultant, obviously. Well, I mean, he still has to be coordinated. Natalie van Zyl is asking a leading question. Did I misunderstand, or did Stan offer to make checklists he has compiled over the years for sketch plans, council documentation, etc., available via SAIA to attendees? Stan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but any chance that
you're not putting me on the spot? Before I moved home, I remember discussing with you whether SAIA had space to put all these on shelves in their library, but there was no sort of affirmative on that, and I actually packed those things into boxes and I gave them to, I think it is Jacques Loebsch, I think his name is, at TUT, and I kept some of them for myself. But having moved home and put stuff in storage and all that, it's now difficult to find all this, but I will get hold of Jacques and get copies, because I would very much like to make that available to architects through SAIA. And you know, it's an aid to help produce better documentation and make sure that there are less mistakes made in producing documentation, inspecting buildings, whatever. Just an example, the building I'm living in now, in this apartment, we found the bathroom has under tile heating. but only half the bathroom is heated. Now I've queried this with the developers, and they said, well, no, that's wrong. The whole bathroom's supposed to be heated. So they had to chop up the whole floor, take the shower out, put in new heating, and put in new tiles. And now they've found there's something like 10 or 12 other apartments in this complex who got the same problem. Now I say, who inspected those? You know, it's all very well switching on the light. You see, switching on, a light comes on, oh, it works. But who tests that the whole floor is heated? Do you blame the architect? Do you blame the principal agent? Do you blame the project manager? Who do you blame?
Stan, I can see that we're going to have to chat again because, colleagues, we've got so many comments and questions that have come through, and I don't even have time to read them because we don't have time left. But just to get back to that question of Natalie, Stan, if you can make those lists available at some stage, then I will take it upon myself to arrange with Karina that those who've attended this SAIAshare event get notified of the availability of those lists. It will be wonderful if we can. So, colleagues, I thank you all for sending in. I'm sure each one of these questions is worth a discussion, but we're going to have to end it there. So that brings us essentially to the point where I, on your behalf, would like to thank our two presenters for presenting two very special presentations. Nadia, thank you for sharing your work with us, your passion and your knowledge. And Stan, thank you for sharing 62 years of practice experience with us. And am I mistaken? How long have you been married for, Stan?
It's now 63 and a half years.
Okay, so you were married
63 and a half.
You started practicing. That's absolutely magnificent. And you said in your reply to me that they were all happy years.
Happy years. Even more remarkable. You have ups and downs, but they've been very happy years. And we've survived.
Nevertheless, colleagues, so thank you to Stan and Nadia, and please stay on just for another minute or two. We're going to have a look at the program for next SAIAshare. I want to thank all the SAIAshare supporters. Thank you very much for joining. I see we have had over 400 attendees this afternoon, and as I've said before, SAIAshare is your program. If you have any topics or presenters that you might think we should cover or should invite to SAIAshare, please let Karina know. We'll be very happy to look into your proposals and suggestions. Karina has already mentioned that SAIAshare carries a category category 1 value. Then we invite you to join us again on the 7th of July. That's the first Friday of the month. In July, we will enjoy the company of Nathan Kabinga, a young, dynamic Congolese author, architect by training, and entrepreneur. I'm sure you'll enjoy his presentation. And then Maria Day is the Chief Operating Officer of the Institute of Interior Designers, but she's going to be speaking on a very interesting topic. Her dictum is thinking differently is key to business longevity and reinvention. So do join us at the beginning of July. We're going to leave you with a simple thought today, and that is a door handle is the handshake of the building. And I wonder how many architects actually consider that first point of contact. We tend to look at things globally in the big picture, but how do we look at the little detail? So colleagues, then I wish you well I'm going to sign off. We're going to see one another on this in July, the first Friday of July. All the best and have a lovely weekend.